API, you can get a lot more information about how to use NXT. It's much more powerful than our client shows. This is because the client is used for the normal user and not particularly for developers per se. The same goes for the asset exchange. For a long while, the asset exchange was used just to do these shares, but memberships and car keys are also possible like that. So I've not seen anyone develop that yet, but I'd love to see somebody use that kind of functionality. It's the same. We tend to get stuck in what we're offered. And the nice thing is you can do a lot more than you thought. This is also one. We have a monetary system. This is where you can create coins on top of Next. So you can issue your own currency. A lot of people said, what use is that? Because I already have Next and I have 600 other cryptocurrency that I could choose from. Why the hell should I create a new one? And somebody became smart, because you can make these things, I have this pointer, you can add certain functions to it. Exchangeable, controllable, reservable, blah, blah, blah. It's what you can do. Somebody thought a reservable coin is a coin where you need to put in Next, and if a certain amount of Next has been collected, it will then give the others coins that are backed by that Next. So it's basically creating a reserve. And with the idea that those coins would hold the value, the underlying value of the Next. Somebody became smart and or was smart and said, I can use it for a crowdfunding. Because what I can do is I can say I want an amount of Next to fund my project, but I don't want to be in control of that money before I have the rest, before I have the full amount, and I want to automate sending it back. And that's exactly what this system does. It reserves it. If it doesn't reach it, it sends it back to the people, and in the meantime, nobody can touch it. So this was a complete turnaround. The people, Lior here designed the monetary system, but certainly not with this in mind, probably. Yeah. This is becoming a crowdfunding function now. If you're just looking at the client, you will not take that out. It takes a logical step. The thing is, what we're doing really different from the basic 1.0 cryptocurrencies is that we try to utilize all of the blockchain. So instead of doing one thing, we try to open it up. You can do transactions, you can store data at one point in time, and you can change it. Based on that premise, you can do a lot more than just sending money. One other thing that is really basic about Next and that I think is really essential and why I like it a lot is cryptocurrency is made to eliminate the intermediaries. So we want to get rid of intermediaries that potentially can be harmful, like I gave the MasterCard example, and unneeded. The thing is, if you now see things built on Bitcoin who want to do the same thing with the blockchain that 2.0s do, they build intermediaries. So you have, for instance, the CoinJoin example is a really good one. If you want to shuffle, if you want to anonymize your Bitcoins, you need to go to a third party. You need to trust them. If you trust them and they run, we have the same problem again. The same goes with all the exchanges, and we know that this is true. We have of course, the Mt. Gox is the biggest one, but there are nobody who has been for a while in crypto hasn't had his share of another exchange has been hacked. Why? It's a third-party service again. There is an intermediary between you and your point.
Or coins have been stolen. Or coins have been stolen by the exchange.
Or the coins have been stolen by the exchange. Or they faked the transaction and they said, oh, we were hacked. There's no way to check this. But the problem is not that the exchanges are inherently evil or inherently bad. The problem is, again, we have an intermediary, and this was just the one thing that we wanted to get out. Most of the things that are done here are things you can do on Bitcoin, not a problem. The difference is you don't need an intermediary. You can do them directly on the blockchain, and you can do them on the blockchain. There is no reason not to do that. This is not finished. There is much more that is possible, but this is, I think, these two things are, I think, the real basis of NXT. It's no intermediaries where you don't need them, and that doesn't mean that you don't need them at a certain point, because sometimes it is good to have someone with knowledge. But if you don't need them, cut them out. And it's easy. It's as simple as that. It's very easy to use the API and start coding yourself. We are now releasing articles where it's explained how easy it is to use to make your own applications. If you have a really basic amount of coding experience, these kinds of things, which are really useful, can be done by almost anyone who wants. And then it becomes much more a creative process, because Next already gives you the tools for this. And not necessarily what we say that you do with it is the thing you should do with it. I think that's also important, because this is an emergent process. That's all I have.
Hi, my name is Bas Wisselink. I come from Amsterdam. I live here. I'm part of the NXT Foundation, or a bit less glorious Stichting Next here in Amsterdam. We've just been based in A-Labs across Central Station in the I, which is for us a very good location, because we're amongst a lot of other startups, which is, I think, for a cryptocurrency, one of the best places to be, because just a blockchain is not enough. You need something to use it for. And this is one of the, probably one of the biggest challenges for blockchain technology that we will get in the coming years. To put it in perspective, I think the World Economic Forum talked about blockchain technology being deployed globally in 2027. I just heard that this morning. So that's 11 years from now, not a long way to go. What kind of blockchain technology? I'm not talking about which brand or which kind of blockchain, but what kind of blockchain technology that's open to history, to coming history, I think. So I'm not talking Bitcoin against Next, or Next against BitShares, or whatever kind. I'm just talking about, for instance, the difference between permissionless and permissioned, which will, for the coming years, be a big one. Are we going towards blockchains that are still under the control of another party? Or are we going towards blockchains that are completely decentralized, open, and anyone can get in? So just to put it in perspective on the things when I talk about use cases, because you will see that kind of mix coming along probably. Just a question, because I don't know the composition of the crowd. Who's completely new to cryptocurrency or blockchain technology? You have you were admirable then in the first talk, because you got a really big load of technical stuff all over you. I'm trying to get back from the technical to what can you do with it. And I'm just going to show you a few things that are being built on our platform. That's my criminal picture. Let me see, because I now need to restart everything, it seems, but luckily I did it this way. Let me just, no, sorry. Okay, while I'm doing this, because it shut down for some reason, One of the key things about Next that makes it what we are doing differently from, well, let's say, for instance, Bitcoin is when you see things in Bitcoin at the moment, the most prominent use case is Bitcoin still used as a currency. What we see happening now in the Bitcoin-based economy is that we see separate use cases that have nothing to do with the currency side. And the reason for this is that it is not, a blockchain can do much more than just move tokens that can be used as coins. A blockchain has also been called a decentralized database, and I think that's a bit overstating it, because many people have already said decentralization does not mean efficiency. If you store large amounts of data on a blockchain and you try to retrieve it to your system, it's not the best way to do it. So if I want to have 1 gigabyte at current speed, I will still have to wait for a long time. But for small amounts of data, it is very good. Ah, there we get it. Okay, so this is what Next tries to do. So coming from the place that you have a blockchain in which on blocks you can store data, information, and that information is witnessed by a huge amount of entities, which can be, huge amount of computers. They all say this data has been submitted at this point in time, and then the next block comes along, and it makes sure, it proves to you that this data in that block has not been changed. That's actually what you probably need to remember about a blockchain. It is, every block contains data that a lot of people, a lot of entities, I need to say computers, have seen at a certain time, and that is not falsifiable. So nobody can come into a blockchain and say, I'm going to change this, because you can't. With that, starting from that premise, you can do a lot of other things than just move a certain token around as payment. It's a very strong one, because this is the double spend problem. You can say this hasn't happened before, so this coin cannot be spent again. So that's the currency part. But what can you do? What more could you do? Well, first thing that people realized, and Next has built this, is we call it a coin, but it's actually a token. Like, for instance, a poker token has the form of a coin, but it has nothing on it. So unless it has $50 on it or $1 on it, it's not worth anything. It's something we agree on when we play poker, for instance. So that token takes a different value. Okay, on that premise you can say, let's call it anything we want and start trading anything we want. And hey presto, we have a decentralized marketplace asset where we can exchange assets. This is what Next does. It has an asset exchange, and the asset exchange is a decentralized token machine. It allows you to create different tokens on the NXT blockchain and trade them between people. And this trade is not centralized. So if I now trade, for instance, well, any trading system where you buy something is centralized in servers. For Next, this is done on the blockchain again. So each block, no one gets in between you and the buyer. This is the system allows you to do this trade. On the Next blockchain, one of the main ways that these tokens are used are, for instance, in what people call crypto shares. So this can be crowd-funded projects where people raise money by selling these tokens, and these tokens then represent, for instance, ownership in a certain venture. And this can be a startup, this can be an existing thing. We have people who have a brick and mortar business who, for a very specific project, raise money with this. So it's a decentralized way of doing crowdfunding, but at the same time also involving the people who are donating to your project. Because like Liaf or Lior, or Liaf is his online name, so sorry. This is a weird thing when you are in crypto. Lior here already explained that if you have a vote and you give someone a token, you can give them that vote. But if you have a token in your account and I want to know, I have made profit in my business, for instance, and I want to distribute this profit, a percentage of it, to these people, I can just send it to the people holding those tokens. Per token, I give them this many next, and it's all automatic. So this makes it very easy to create a small organization where you involve everyone. The same goes for the vote. If somebody has bought into for instance, my project, I can give them control. I can choose to give them control over my project. I can put up votes, and then I can get the results of the votes. And for instance, the money raised in my project, I put down 4 projects that I can do with this money, and people choose and I will do this. Personally, I think this would be, for small charities, this would be an enormous use case, because one of the problems that we see with charities is that the way that money is handled is people don't trust it anymore. So if you can do it in this way, where everybody knows there is no cheating anymore, I think it can be a very strong case to make people empowered about their donations again, but also give trust back to the charities by them automating via the blockchain these kinds of votes. The asset exchange also can be used for many other things. You have membership tokens you can create. Anything that you can think of that you could write on a poker chip and trade between people, you can do digitally and decentralized on our asset exchange. It's been running since April 2013 already. Top of my 14, yes. Top of my head, 693 assets are at this moment created on the asset exchange, of which I think 150 are actively traded between people for many different things. They can even have almost no value, of course. I remember one of the first use cases is that people created the love asset, which meant that if you liked a post by somebody on the forum, you could send them some love. It can also be cute and nice, but again, it uses this way. And it turned out in the end that this actually became valuable, so these people were very happy. This is a small list of what would be possible on the asset exchange. So you could do private equities or public equities, commodities, anything. It's possible to create unique assets. So this means that you, for instance, could trade cars on it, because every asset represents that specific car. You could even use it in a different way. If you put a code connected to that specific asset, you could use it as a key. Because if you then prove ownership of this asset, if you could prove this and make this into software, you could start your car with it, because it makes certain that this is your ownership. Imagine how easy it is to sell your car. You can just put it on the asset exchange for sale, boom. And the ownership goes to another owner who can just start his car immediately with this token. The idea behind all these blockchain things, blockchain products, is to take out the intermediaries. Not because intermediaries are inherently bad, but because it is a position of power that they could misuse. And there is a lot of talk about the trustlessness of the system. And it doesn't mean that you don't trust people. It means that you don't need to trust them. And this is something that's really important about blockchain. There is no need anymore to trust these people. So for instance, one of I think the most recent phases where you could see that this is where things can go wrong is MasterCard. Anybody remember WikiLeaks? At a certain point, we had WikiLeaks, Julian Assange did a lot of things that the US government wasn't happy with, but they asked for donations. They got donations, and then MasterCard decided, we are not doing any donations anymore, we will block every transaction for donations against WikiLeaks. And this is a really weird thing to happen. You have a private company here, which is supposed to be a neutral company, which is taking political stance. And that's where these kinds of things become really important, because you get political decisions mixed up with business decisions. MasterCard before that was a neutral, supposedly at least a neutral company, and you would expect that from somebody who provides you a service. You are not expecting that company to come in and make a comment by blocking you and possibly even giving your name to whatever agency, because you don't know this, to come in and block this and say you cannot do this while it's your money and you're a member. So it's not about not trusting them, it's about not having to trust them anymore. With Next or Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency, you can make this transaction because it's your value and you can do with it what you want. So all these things that we're doing here, you can put on that level. It's a choice. Different things, vouchers, software licensing, voting rights, like I said, anything you can think on a poker chip. Now we get to third-party businesses. This is OT Docs. You can go, if you have your laptop or your mobile phone, you can go to otdocs.com. It's a Singapore-based company who is using the next blockchain, there we go, the next blockchain for the messaging function. Because what you can do on the next blockchain, you cannot only use, you cannot only use it for storing data about tokens on it. You can also use it for plain data. You can put information on a blockchain for which you again know this data cannot be changed anymore. Now it's becoming interesting. Let's see. This is my... Here we go. Mostly kicking things works. So what OT Docs does, it is a tool to store documents, and in a very specific case, it stores business documents. So, for instance, if I have a contract on a large shipment from whatever country to my country, and I want that document to be available to a lot of people, and I also want to know that this document hasn't been tampered with. You can store the documents on the NXT blockchain, or you can store it at a separate place and only make a hash of the document, so you can prove this document is the same as has been verified here. This is very interesting because it allows you to be certain about all your business agreements. And it's quite amazing that in a way it's a bit scary that this is an interesting use case, because anything that's stored on a server is subject to a problem of, for instance, a hack. And the more value that you will get in something, the more interested it will become to do something to that data. With blockchain technology, with NXT technology, we have a way to make sure that this cannot be done. And it's a really big use case. It's in Singapore, it won a startup accelerator, and they're developing this now. And they already have a few use cases with UBS, with a few banks, DBS, and they receive and with an Australian bank, and they're making proof of concept with that. OT Docs. The same company is doing a bit in the same vein. They are doing Notifile, and this is something that anyone who works with multiple file versions is familiar with. At a certain point, you're making a business document, and you have version 1, version 2, and
up until version 3 that goes well, but then everybody has it in the mail, and somebody is checking version 4, and the other one is already on version 7, and this can be really irritating, because you think you're talking about the same thing, and actually you're talking about a slightly different thing. And if there is a lot at stake, this is a difficult thing, because that can really become expensive. Notifile is a simple tracking, a simple blockchain tracking software that uses this data, and you can check your documents against the blockchain to see you're on the right version. Again, it's really small. It's a really simple use case, but it is really important. It's nice to see, because Richard also said something about the blockchain will change the world. And it's not because of the big things, it's because of really stupid, simple things like this. If I look at version 5 and I have 10,000 written in there, and you're looking at version 6 and it's 15,000, that's a mistake that could cost you 5,000. It's as simple as that. The larger the number gets, apparently the less clear it becomes in papers. This kind of thing can really help out. Also Singaporean. This is one I like personally, because it's not done by a company. I will see if I can get this on my browser. Yes, here we have it. This is NotBot. NotBot is a copyright proofing tool. I remember a long time ago, if you wanted to prove your copyright for instance, a script, and my background is theatre, when I had a script and I didn't have money to actually make this into a real copyright, the thing you could do is you could send it by mail and get it stamped. And that date stamp was accepted as a proof that you were the first at least to send this, and that you were the first to have this piece in hand, and that it was your script. This was a very primitive way to prove this IP, this intellectual property is mine. You could also get it stamped at the tax office. NotBot does something similar, but on the blockchain. You upload your document up to this site. It generates, it doesn't take it into a server, it makes a hash of it. So this means it does a cryptographical transaction on, which makes it into a code. A code would be the best way, a hash. And that hash is put on the blockchain. And the specific thing to remember about a hash is that it's not possible to make the same hash with a different document. So it's proof that this version, again, is what I put on there. And it then puts it on the next blockchain at a certain time. So if I can prove that at this time this document was uploaded by me, I can prove, I have a very strong proof of my copyright on this document. And it gives you a certificate, a timestamp certificate. At this time, this document with this hash was put on the blockchain. It may also put it on the Bitcoin blockchain just as a redundancy. The fun thing about Next is that it does it 150 times faster. That's quite a bit faster. That's NotBot. And the nice thing is this is just created by someone in an afternoon, because the functionality is already in Next. So this is, what he created was the interface and the idea. The implementation just took him an afternoon, and again, it's a small thing, but for someone who has the choice to spend money on proving his copyright, or just uploading it here and having a cryptographical proof, that's big. I think that those kinds of things are where the difference in blockchain technology will be made, in efficiency and in security. And it's all already possible. Like Leo already said, just going back towards the scary API, is we have he showed you two things, and I think this is important for the way of thinking about let me see what this is. I'll show you one of my accounts just to show you what it can do. There we have it. Takes a while to load. We'll see when it pops up. There it is. This is one of my accounts. This is a donation account I have on the forum, so people can send donations to me if they want. The thing that interests me most when I see people asking how do I develop for Next, and also when they look at technology in general, but cryptocurrency I see it a lot, is they tend to get stuck on the wallets. This is a wallet that we built. This is what you get if you download the Next software and you open it. Then you get this. This is what we think you should do with it. Doesn't mean you have to do this with it. You can do a lot more with it. That's all hidden here. These are the actual functions that you can do with it. And that has very little to do, according to me, with this part. This is what we think that's interesting for you. Who are we? So for my case in point, to know what is interesting or what you can do things with is, or has always been this part. This is what's called messaging on Next. I don't know about you, but if I hear messaging, I still think about SMSs and WhatsApp. It's as simple as that, because this is what most people will see as messages, human readable text. So people do this. These are messages sent to me, just generating a public key and stuff like that. Actually, what the messaging system does, it sends data, information over the blockchain. I can send data from my account to another account. And I don't need to understand it, as long as a computer monitoring this and knowing how to decrypt this data. For instance, if I shoot out, for instance, data on prices for something, and I have coded something monitoring these prices, and once a certain price has been met, it executes a sale, for instance. That's a message I can send. It's a really simple thing. If somebody would read that in a computer format, I would have no idea what it's about, but it does mean if something sells something. So you can make programs with this messaging function. And I think that's a lot stronger than just generating a public key. So if you look at the client, you wouldn't know it. If you look at the API, you can get a lot more information about how to use NXT. It's much more powerful than our client shows. This is because the client is used for the normal user and not particularly for developers per se. The same goes for the asset exchange. For a long while, the asset exchange was used just to do these shares, but memberships and car keys are also possible like that. I've not seen anyone develop that yet, but I'd love to see somebody use that kind of functionality. It's the same. We tend to get stuck in what we're offered. And the nice thing is you can do a lot more than you thought. This is also one. We have a monetary system. This is where you can create coins on top of Next. So you can issue your own currency. A lot of people said, what use is that? Because I already have Next and I have 600 other cryptocurrency that I could choose from. Why the hell should I create a new one? And somebody became smart, because you can make these things, this pointer, you can add certain functions to it. It's changeable, controllable, reservable, blah, blah, blah. It's what you can do somebody thought a reservable coin is a coin where you need to put in next, and if a certain amount of next has been collected, it will then give the others coins that are backed by that next. So it's basically creating a reserve. And with the idea that those coins would hold the value, the underlying value of the next. Somebody became smart and or was smart and said, I can use it for a crowdfunding. Because what I can do is I can say I want an amount of next to fund my project, but I don't want to be in control of that money before I have the rest, before I have the full amount, and I want to automate sending it back. And that's exactly what this system does. It reserves it. If it doesn't reach it, it sends it back to the people, and in the meantime, nobody can touch it. So this was a complete turnaround. The people, Lior here designed the monetary system, but certainly not with this in mind, probably. Yeah. This is becoming a crowdfunding function now. If you're just looking at the client, you will not take that out. It takes a logical step. The thing is, what we're doing really different from the basic 1.0 cryptocurrencies is that we try to utilize all of the blockchain. So instead of doing one thing, we try to open it up. You can do transactions, you can store data at one point in time, and you can change it. Based on that premise, you can do a lot more than just sending money. One other thing that is really basic about Next and that I think is really essential and why I like it a lot is cryptocurrency is made to eliminate the intermediaries. So we want to get rid of intermediaries that potentially can be harmful, like I gave the MasterCard example, and unneeded. The thing is, if you now see things built on Bitcoin who want to do the same thing with the blockchain that 2.0s do, they build intermediaries. So you have, for instance, the CoinJoin example is a really good one. If you want to shuffle, if you want to anonymize your Bitcoins, you need to go to a third party. You need to trust them. If you trust them and they run, we have the same problem again. The same goes with all the exchanges, and we know that this is true. We have of course, the Mt. Gox is the biggest one, but there are nobody who has been for a while in crypto hasn't had his share of another exchange has been hacked. Why? It's a third-party service again. There is an intermediary between you and your coin.
Or coins have been stolen. Or coins have been stolen by the exchange.
Or the coins have been stolen by the exchange. Or they faked the transaction and they said, oh, we were hacked. There's no way to check this. But the problem is not that the exchanges are inherently evil or inherently bad. The problem is, again, we have an intermediary. And this was just the one thing that we wanted to get out. Most of the things that are done here are things you can do on Bitcoin. Not a problem. The difference is you don't need an intermediary. You can do them directly on the blockchain, and you can do them on the blockchain. There is no reason not to do that. This is not finished. There is much more that is possible, but this is, I think, these two things are, I think, the real basis of NXT. It's no intermediaries where you don't need them, and that doesn't mean that you don't need them at a certain point, because sometimes it is good to have someone with knowledge. But if you don't need them, cut them out. And it's easy. It's as simple as that. It's very easy to use the API and start coding yourself. We are now releasing articles where it's explained how easy it is to use to make your own applications. If you have a really basic amount of coding experience, these kinds of things, which are really useful, can be done by almost anyone who wants. And then it becomes much more a creative process, because Next already gives you the tools for this. and not necessarily what we say that you do with it is the thing you should do with it. I think that's also important because this is an emergent process. That's all I have. Other questions of a non-technical nature?
Centralization is a possible problem for any future innovation before. What is your vision? You're one of the 73 first shareholders.
No, oh no, I wish.
Of next? No,
I'm
you're
not,
not.
no.
You're not. All right. I've read that there are
Yeah.
73 people that were at the beginning. Don't know whether you have a specific name for them, but suppose they would have a congress or something
Yeah.
with the 73 of them.
Yeah.
Could they form a sort of a kind of centralized decision-making unit there?
If they would do that, yes, definitely. If they didn't done, then there are still a few large holders. There is one NXT holder who's been holding since the start, who has 50 million, so that's 5% of the complete stake. And he's a bit OCD. He does forge next, and once in a while he sells off the excess, so it's exactly 50 million again. Sometimes fun to watch it too. He's scared about weird numbers. But if that were the case, yes, that is a possibility. And it has been a worry of almost any cryptocurrency system, the way distribution is done. So the 73, it's generated quite a lot of myth around it. I know of a few whom I know personally who have done, who also have gotten out of the project completely. But that's a difficult topic. They could, but this is just the same again as I think the famous picture of Charles Hoskinson a few months ago with the 5 people on stage who represent almost or more than 50% of hashing power in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, that's not me saying Bitcoin does it too, so it's okay. Absolutely not. It is a problem, and it can be a problem. The only thing I think at this stage is if I look at the blockchain and at the distributions, the chances are low. I don't say none. People can move their funds in such a way that you can't trace them, or that you can't see who owns accounts. So that's still a possibility. On the other hand, and that's the way these systems also work, the same thing works for the hashing power as for your stakes. If it's found out, the system implodes. If people know that Bitcoin, for instance, would be manipulated by these large hashing, and this is a good defense, I think, it would implode. And all their value they've put in, gone. Same goes for us. If somebody does that, and these things are traceable, done. You lose all your money. And I think that's because cryptocurrencies are not just a computer-based thing. I think that's really a misconception. There are 2 parts to what we do in cryptocurrency. We have a technical side, and that's the computer side that shows us we can not change this data, and this is done at this time. And this system is safe within these parameters. The other side is very much a social side. If anyone who spends any amount of time on a forum for cryptocurrency can see how passionate people are about it, for any number of reasons. Some people for a business reason, other people for a completely libertarian reason, or a pro-choice reason. All these things combined create a tension within the system that makes it more and more difficult to do these kinds of things, because people are watching these people like hawks. You can have a really large account, but I do know that those are tracked. I do know that for the businesses that are created, everybody knows their account names. Those are watched by hawks. And within a few minutes you will see people coming on the forum and say, why has this transaction been gone there? Why did it go there? Even if it's a really simple one. it's sometimes really difficult to do something in cryptocurrency because everybody is watching you. And a lot of people are very suspicious. So that would be my answer to this. It is possible, but the chances are lower and lower and lower over time. A year ago, 1.5 years ago, I would be more worried than I am now. And I guess that in a year ago, 1.5 years from now, I will be less worried still. Yeah.
Options, I guess. Already possible to assign or limit certain options for the receiving person to spend the money?
Yeah.
And what, aren't you sometimes afraid that it might get a bit out of hand in terms of the freedom of people to spend their money?
That is a
Or is that a
difficult.
bit too vague of a question?
I know well this way and getting away with it or
I
not.
wasn't really pointing at that.
No.
More in the way of maybe when you get your salary, that at some point they will limit what you can spend. How you
And permissionless blockchains, that discussion at the start. This is vital to that part. If I have a permissionless blockchain, and that's a blockchain, a permissionless blockchain I would define as a blockchain that anyone has access to, and anyone can do anything on it. So if you have that, and somebody tries to do this, which he can, because this is his option, someone else will pop up and say, I have a different system where you don't have this. Where would you go? It's as simple as that, I think. Because if somebody would implement such a system on our system, and somebody else does a system with exactly the same, but not that function, where would the people using it, where would the people, you are not forced to use systems.
But I mean, if there's the wants to limit the spending options. For
Yeah.
example, with healthcare, if
Oh,
you
yeah,
get
this
a
one.
healthcare allowance or how
Yeah.
to call it, that you can only spend it on healthcare,
Yeah.
that might make sense.
Yeah.
But so then the person paying the money would want to use that
Ah,
option,
yes.
but the person receiving it wouldn't. So then
You would say an insurer, for instance, not with the, that is what
or
you.
just that you can only spend it at the doctor and not at
Yes,
the
and
grocery store.
That is possible, and I think a lot of people would say that's a use where it's eminently, where it works, because it's about programmable money, and that's what Bitcoin has been called a lot. You can do this, and I think it will be tried. I can't answer if that, I won't answer, I think, if it's good or bad. It's one of the things that we as NXT Foundation also have asked ourselves a lot, and we specifically only take a facilitating role, for instance. We do not get involved in the discussion for how people can do these things. Because I think we would then, very practically, we would become a police of ideas. And I don't have the time for that. Nobody has. And so that's even more practical than on a moral level. Nobody can take that time. Personally, I would say yes, I think it would be very interesting to see that project, to see what happens. Because if that happens, I am fairly sure, for the very same reasons that I say it's really difficult to work in cryptocurrency, that people would not question your motive very strongly. And if they don't like it, somebody will probably set up a competing product. In that way, cryptocurrency is really a capitalist's beast in the most neutral sense. If somebody does this and they think it's a bad product, somebody will set up another product, and people will move there. That's the idea. We haven't seen it yet, so don't quote on it for me to. Yeah.
What's in it for you?
I am a holder, that's the first one, so I've been involved in NXT for a long time, not a first, but the main thing is, for people who read the bio on the site, I've a bit of a weird background compared to a lot of people in cryptocurrency. I don't have a strictly monetary background or activist. I come from theatre. I've done a lot of teaching in creative processes. And one of the first things, I entered cryptocurrency just like a lot of people just after the Bitcoin boom, the $1,000 in December 2013. I knew about it already, but I didn't do anything about it. Then I saw this, and of course I went and looked. A lot of the altcoins at that moment that I saw were really boring. They just copied what Bitcoin was already doing, and I had already decided not to enter Bitcoin because, wow, I didn't have that money. Looking around, I then saw a few other projects like BitShares, eMoney, which is still in production, and Next. And Next really came out for me because it was a community that does not only have technical people. It was very open to people who are who are trying to think outside the box, and that appeals to me. And I think that a lot of thinking within cryptocurrency, even now, is terribly narrow. It's like saying this is only digital money. It is not. It's also not just a blockchain, because that's just I talk to a lot of people who want to do things with blockchain technology, and they don't even have a clue that it is this kind of system. And I'm enjoying the fact that so many, who gets the chance to be at the same start as, let's say, 1985, when the internet was thought of, not 1993 when it went mainstream. We're before that. That is an amazing thing. I really think it's an historic moment, and that's part of it. But also, of course, knowing what I know from history, I'd like to be there when the prices start rising. That's the different part, but it's mostly trying to push this as far as possible and opening ideas. That's my fun.
We have about 2 or 3 more questions, and then we should really...
Okay, fine. Are there 2 or 3 more questions?
If there's not, that's great too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
The space you're competing in, the public distributed ledger.
Yeah.
I haven't heard Ethereum mentioned once today. Are you unaware of Ethereum?
No,
are you
absolutely.
avoiding
No, I'm not living in a box at all. It is a different beast. Ethereum tries to do something, well, no, 2 things. One, I don't like to talk about Next by comparing it to another, because it will almost inevitably make me sound like an arsehole. Ethereum does this, blah, blah, blah. So that's also what I'm trying to avoid.
That's okay,
No,
but I didn't
it
hear
does
about
something different. We've talked about this quite a lot, because Next had the opportunity to incorporate, for instance, Turing completeness. 2 years ago, there was somebody who worked out how to do this on the then NXT blockchain, and it was rejected by our core devs for the very reason that it is a very powerful thing, but also a very uncontrollable thing. Turing completeness means, for people who don't know, that you can't code anything into the blockchain. This also means the potential for who's going to test that this is safe, what is coded on the blockchain. That's a real danger. Also, the big problem that we see with blockchains, and none of the blockchains have solved yet, is bloat. The blockchain keeps growing. Once it grows to a certain size, it will start to restrict access, because normal people will not be able to get it in a certain time anymore, and that creates an elite too. So and that problem has not been solved yet. They're working on it really hard. Every project is. What Next now does differently is what Ethereum tries to do again is you can script your things. Next, our philosophy is you don't need to script everything. For the market that we're competing in, a message is already coded. This works. You don't need to invent the wheel every time. We're offering building blocks, so it's a modular system. Ethereum is an open system. There's place on the market for both. So that's mainly the reason. So the arsehole reason and the reason that we're doing something different.
I don't think